If you take a genetically perfect fish,
Mhm.
like one with the absolute highest potential for growth, and you place it in an environment that is just a little too small, something really fascinating and honestly a bit terrifying happens.
Yeah, terrifying is definitely the right word for it.
Right, because it doesn't just run out of room and, awkwardly bump into the glass.
No, no, it's way more complex than that.
Exactly. Its body actively recognizes the physical limits of its environment, and it releases chemical signals to paralyze its own cellular development.
It essentially chooses biological stunting over suffocating.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today we are exploring those hidden mechanics of growth and how the environments we build either unlock our potential or actively shut it down.
It's a brutal but brilliant survival mechanism.
Hmm.
And it perfectly frames the mission we have for you today because, well, we are looking at this exact phenomenon playing out in real time right in someone's backyard.
Yes, exactly. So our source today is a highly specific, deeply personal log. It's titled Part 272 of Notes on Fishkeeping. It was written by an author named Ang and published on June 16th, 2026.
A very specific slice of life.
Very. And the focus here is on the Jewel Cichlid, which is, a famously vibrant and complex freshwater fish.
And I think what is crucial to understand right from the start is the methodical nature of our author. I mean, this is entry number 272.
Right. That's a lot of entries.
It is. That means we aren't looking at a casual hobbyist who just bought a fish tank yesterday.
Mhm.
Ang has built a robust data set through really patient daily observation.
Right.
So establishing the baseline here, there's a brooding pair of cichlids, the parents, and a group of their newly hatched fry, and they're all living in this outdoor pond setup.
Okay.
And because Ang is paying such close attention, literally day in and day out, they are able to catch this microscopic biological shift that honestly almost anyone else would have completely missed.
Well, yeah, because usually when you look at something every single day, you are blinded by the illusion of stasis, right?
Oh, totally.
It's like the hour hand on a clock. It never seems to move while you are staring right at it. But Aang actually notices the hand tick forward during the most routine part of the day, which is feeding time.
Yes.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because the daily feeding routine relies on a very strict division of resources, and it's based entirely on physical capability.
Precisely. So Ang uses two completely different sizes of fish pellets. They're these large, dense pellets formulated for the adult brooding pair, and then tiny micro pellets for the fry.
So it's a very binary system, big food, small food.
Exactly. But the breakthrough in entry 272 is that the fry, which have been, steadily growing, have finally crossed an invisible threshold. Ang notes that these fry, which are now officially entering the juvenile stage, are actively feeding on the large adult pellets.
It's like, if you think about human milestones, it's like a toddler finally graduating from that pureed baby food.
Wait, the mush in the jars.
Exactly. And they finally sit up at the grown-up table and eat the exact same meal as their parents, like a piece of steak instead of mashed peas.
That's a great analogy. And that seemingly mundane detail is actually a massive diagnostic indicator.
Because you can't really measure them, right?
Exactly. In a pond environment, you cannot easily take a fish out, put it on a scale, or measure its length with calipers without causing immense stress to the animal.
Yeah, that would be a disaster.
And the physical size difference between a late-stage fry and an early-stage juvenile is almost imperceptible from above the waterline. You just can't see it.
So you can't see the growth, so you have to look for the capability.
What's fascinating here is how physical growth in these closed ecosystems is often first recognized through behavioral changes, like that food capacity, rather than just visual size.
Wow. Okay.
Because think about the mechanical and biological requirements here. It is not just about the fish having a mouth wide enough to swallow the pellet.
So I imagine jaw morphology is a big part of it.
It is, definitely. But the digestive tract of a fry is designed to break down very specific, easily digestible proteins. The adult pellet is denser, it's harder, and it requires a much more robust production of digestive enzymes in the gut to actually process those nutrients.
Oh, I see. So yesterday, their jaw mechanics and digestive enzymes couldn't handle it.
All right.
But today, they can. It is a definitive milestone. It's like Ang's strict use of two different pellet sizes accidentally created the perfect diagnostic test for internal maturity.
It really did.
The food itself literally becomes a measuring stick.
And that shift in diet cascades into every other biological system. The consumption of those larger nutrient-dense pellets provides a sudden surplus of metabolic energy, which immediately triggers the next phase of the cichlid's development.
Which brings us directly to the second major observation in the log, because Aang doesn't just stop at what the fish are eating.
Right, there's more.
Yeah, they note a simultaneous change in how the fish are looking. We get a secondary confirmation of maturity, which is the reddening.
The reddening, yes.
Yeah, some of these juvenile fish are exhibiting increased color intensity, specifically this reddish hue that's spreading throughout their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and I actually have to push back on this conclusion just a little bit.
You're right here.
Because when we look at nature, diet frequently dictates pigmentation, right?
Right.
Like flamingos are famously pink because of the beta-carotene in the shrimp and the algae they consume.
That's true.
If you feed them a different diet, they turn white. So if these juvenile fish just started eating the large adult pellets today, isn't it highly probable that this reddening is just a cosmetic side effect?
Ah, I see where you're going.
Yeah, because a lot of commercial fish foods are packed with color-enhancing ingredients, like astaxanthin. So are they just absorbing red dye from the big pellets, or does this actually signify a profound biological gear shift? I mean, basically, is it food coloring, or is it puberty?
Okay, that is a highly critical distinction and honestly a very logical assumption to make for anyone listening.
It just seems like the simplest explanation, right?
It does. And if we were talking about a different species or a heavily processed artificial diet, you might be exactly right. But if we analyze how Aang connects these dots within the context of cichlid biology, it becomes clear this is an endocrine shift, not just a dietary stain.
Okay, so walk me through the mechanics of that. Why isn't it just the food?
Well, for you listening, let's look at how fish biology actually works. In fish, pigmentation is controlled by specialized cells in the skin called chromatophores.
Okay, chromatophores.
Yes. And producing the specific chromatophores responsible for vibrant reds, they're called erythrophores, that requires a tremendous amount of metabolic bandwidth.
Really? Just to be red?
Just to be red. A mere fry cannot afford that energy expenditure. It needs every single calorie just to fuel basic cellular division and avoid being eaten. It literally cannot afford to be red.
Oh, because bright colors in the wild are basically a neon sign for predators.
Exactly. It is a huge evolutionary risk, and it's a high energetic cost. But once a juvenile is robust enough to take down adult-sized food, it suddenly has a caloric surplus.
Ah, the extra energy from the big pellets.
Yes. And the endocrine system recognizes this surplus and begins producing hormones that signal the onset of sexual maturity. These hormones trigger the nervous system to expand those erythrophores, flooding the skin with red pigment.
Wow.
So the Jewel Cichlid, this vibrant red, is an honest biological signal to the rest of the pond. It communicates health, dominance, and a readiness to claim territory.
So the fish wouldn't waste the energy turning red unless it biologically had to.
Exactly.
It is an internal chemical response fueled by the new diet, but not artificially dyed by it.
Precisely. Aang is looking at a holistic biological transformation here. The ability to mechanically digest the large pellet and the onset of the red coloration serve as dual independent confirmations of this new life stage.
They both confirm the same thing.
Right. The fish have officially crossed a major threshold.
Okay, well, that makes perfect sense. But that red signaling of maturity introduces a massive new problem, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Because if red means they are preparing to claim territory and establish dominance, this small, nurturing pond suddenly becomes like a biological battleground, which is exactly the tension that bubbles up in the next part of Aang's log.
Yes, the physical limitations of the environment begin to really clash with the biological potential of the fish.
Right. Aang poses a really critical question. Will these juveniles actually grow into large, mature adults if they remain grouped together in this current outdoor pond? It's the classic dilemma of scale. It's kind of like
having too many rapidly growing teenagers suddenly sharing a single cramped bedroom.
Yes. Exactly that. At a certain point, the physical space is going to dictate the ultimate outcome of their biological potential. Somebody is going to lose their mind in that room.
They really are. And this raises an important question about what biologists call carrying capacity and the mechanics of that stunting phenomenon you mentioned at the very beginning of our deep dive.
Right, the stunting.
Because every closed environment has a maximum load it can sustain.
And when we talk about that load, we aren't just talking about the volume of water displacing their physical bodies, right? Like, it's not just a spatial issue.
Not at all. We are talking about bioload. As these Jewel cichlids eat larger food and grow, their metabolic exhaust increases. They consume way more dissolved oxygen, and critically, they excrete more ammonia through their gills and their waste.
And ammonia is really bad news.
Highly toxic. If the density of fish outpaces the environment's ability to process that ammonia, the water quality degrades rapidly.
So how does the stunting actually happen then? Is it just the poor water quality making them sick and so they stop growing?
It is much more sophisticated than that. It is an active chemical feedback loop. When cichlids are grouped too closely together, especially as they enter this territorial reddening phase, the constant proximity causes immense psychological and physical stress.
Okay.
And that stress triggers the release of cortisol into their bloodstream.
Which is the primary stress hormone.
Yes. And elevated cortisol actively suppresses what is known as the somatotropic axis.
The somatotropic axis.
Yes, that's the system responsible for releasing growth hormones. Furthermore, the fish excrete pheromones into the water that essentially broadcast their density.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, if the water volume is small, these pheromones concentrate, signaling to every fish in the pond that resources are desperately scarce.
Oh, man. So it acts like a biological thermostat. When the room gets too hot, meaning, too many stress hormones and pheromones floating around in the water, the system actively shuts off the heater.
Yes.
It just shuts down cellular growth to prevent a total system failure.
That is a perfect analogy. They will physically halt their own development to adapt to the cramped space. And what is so remarkable about this log entry is Ang's foresight.
They see it coming.
They absolutely do. Ang recognizes that the very environment that nurtured these fish is the incubator that kept them safe from predators and allowed them to reach this juvenile stage, is now the exact thing holding them back.
The incubator has become a cage.
It really has. It's the exact mechanism that will stunt them from becoming large, mature adults.
That is such a profound realization, honestly. Staying in a hyper-nurturing environment past your designated growth phase doesn't keep you safe. It actively halts your development.
Precisely.
And Ang knows this. So, recognizing this environmental ceiling, the log outlines a plan. We finally move from quiet observation to necessary action.
The hallmark of a true backyard citizen scientist. You document the problem, you formulate a hypothesis, and you design a test.
Right. So the plan is an experiment scheduled for the coming holiday. Ang is going to move these newly reddened, large pellet-eating juveniles to a completely new setup. It's a long-planned outdoor pond situated on the backyard balcony. And the log specifically highlights that this new environment will include aquatic plants that require full sunlight.
Which is key.
Yeah, so what does this all mean? Let's break down the mechanics of this. If the primary problem was just that the fish were crowded and producing too much cortisol and ammonia, couldn't Ang just buy like a massive 100-gallon glass tank for the living room? Why go through the complex trouble of building a balcony pond that's reliant on full sunlight and live aquatic plants?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see Ang's brilliant approach to ecosystem synthesis.
Okay.
A large glass tank indoors is ultimately a sterile artificial environment. It relies entirely on mechanical filters, synthetic water conditioners, and the human being to manually intervene whenever the chemistry gets out of balance.
You're constantly doing water changes and chemical testing.
Yeah, exactly. But moving the pond to a sunlit balcony is not just about giving the fish more room or increasing the square footage. It is about creating a closed-loop biological machine.
Okay, a biological machine. I love that.
Wow.
How do the sunlight and the plants actually drive that machine?
It comes down to the nitrogen cycle. In an indoor artificial tank, you have to constantly manage that toxic ammonia we talked about earlier. But in a sunlit balcony pond, the aquatic plants do the heavy lifting.
They act as the filter.
Yeah. The fish excrete ammonia. Naturally occurring nitrifying bacteria in the pond convert that toxic ammonia into nitrates and then into nitrates.
That is essentially liquid fertilizer, right?
Exactly. It's pure fertilizer. And because the pond is exposed to full, unadulterated sunlight, those aquatic plants can vigorously photosynthesize. They pull those nitrates out of the water to fuel their own rapid growth.
Wow.
So the plants act as a highly efficient living filtration system, actively purifying the water for the cichlids.
That is an incredibly elegant solution. The waste of one organism directly fuels the growth of another, keeping the water chemistry perfectly stable.
It's beautiful, really. And the sunlight does far more than just feed the plants. Vigorous photosynthesis means the plants are off-gassing pure oxygen directly into the water column.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, they achieve a level of oxygen saturation that is very difficult to replicate with just like an indoor air pump. Plus, the complex root structures and dense leaves of these thriving plants provide exactly what these newly territorial reddening juveniles need, which is physical boundaries.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
If they're becoming aggressive and looking to claim space, a bare glass tank would be an absolute nightmare.
It would be a war zone.
Right. But a dense jungle of aquatic plants breaks their line of sight. It reduces the cortisol levels because they don't have to constantly stare at their rivals. The thermostat stays low, and the growth hormones can keep pumping.
Precisely. And there is one final critical benefit to this sunlit ecosystem.
What's that?
Full UV exposure promotes the growth of epiphytic algae and microfauna, these tiny organisms like infusoria and daphnia that colonize the plant leaves.
Little snacks.
Exactly. Little snacks. This provides the cichlids with an opportunity to engage in natural foraging behaviors throughout the entire day rather than just passively waiting for Aang to drop pellets from the sky.
Wow. So to summarize what Aang is doing here, they aren't just giving the fish a bigger room. By synthesizing full sunlight, living plant life, and the natural nitrogen cycle, Aang is optimizing the environment to completely remove the biological breaks.
Yes.
The goal is to see if this rich, self-sustaining world will finally unlock the ultimate physical potential of the Jewel Cichlid. I mean, it is an amazing leap from just watching a fish eat a bigger piece of food to engineering a completely sympathetic habitat.
It really is a masterclass in observation, deduction, and applied biology.
It really is. And looking back at the arc of this whole journal entry, it is quite a ride for the listener. I mean, we started with the smallest possible detail, the behavioral shift of a tiny mouth digesting a denser pellet. And then we realized that invisible milestone triggered an endocrine shift, expanding those chromatophores and flooding the fish with the red signaling of maturity.
Right, which naturally led to the biological tension of the carrying capacity. The realization that the increased bioload, the pheromones, and the stress hormones would literally shut down their growth.
The environmental ceiling.
Yes.
And it all culminated in this brilliant scientific plan to build a sunlit balcony ecosystem, utilizing that nitrogen cycle to create a space where these fish could reach their true genetic potential.
It just proves that growth rarely announces itself with a massive, undeniable event. It usually shows up quietly, disguised as a slightly larger pellet being eaten on a random Tuesday.
Yeah, that's so true. And for you listening, I think that is where the true weight of Aang's log hits home. It's so easy to breeze past the routines of our own lives. We get comfortable in our incubators.
We really do.
But if you pay close, patient attention to your own behavioral shifts, your own capacities increasing, you might realize that you've crossed an invisible threshold.
Which leaves us with a rather profound reality to consider.
Yeah.
Aang recognized that the very environment that nurtured the fry into juveniles was the exact environment that would eventually stunt them with stress and chemical limits. It requires deliberate and sometimes terrifying intervention to move to the next stage. So if a simple biological feedback loop can paralyze the growth of a perfectly healthy organism just because its tank is too small, well, what environmental carrying capacity have you hit? Are you still growing? Or had you been in your incubator so long that your environment is actively sending the signals to shut down your potential?
Because sometimes the only way to find out how big you can actually grow is to force yourself out of the pond, find some sunlight, and build a completely new ecosystem.